The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Abus from Dyn365 Pros. We've teamed up with Avantico to provide the highest level of service for customers either implementing or using Dynamics 365. There are a few other people logging into the webinar this morning, so we're going to ask for your patience and give us just another minute or two to allow those people to join in. Thank you. All right, well, good morning, everyone. On behalf of Dyn365 Pros and Avantico, welcome to today's presentation. We've teamed up to provide our customers, our mutual customers, the highest level of service and advice when they're using Dynamics 365 or implementing Dynamics 365 for the first time. Today we'll be looking at Dynamics 365, the Enterprise Edition, with an emphasis on managing your mobile workforce or field service. So that can take many forms. You may be in construction, you may be in installation and repair, HVAC, in-home healthcare services, preventative maintenance, lots of different scenarios there, and we'll touch upon all of those. So you'll be receiving what we'll call a high-level overview of the solution. If you need a second look or a deeper dive into any specific portion of the Dynamics field service or sales or customer service or marketing, we'd be happy to do that at a later date. My name is Mark Abus. My colleague is Ken Farmer. He'll be doing the heavy lifting today, providing a demonstration of Dynamics 365 field service in a live environment. But before we get started, if Dynamics 365 is new to you, let's talk a little bit about the platform. So for much too long, enterprise level business solutions and databases have been kind of siloed, and there hasn't been a lot of interoperability or integration. For instance, your ERP system didn't talk to the service and repair, marketing data didn't integrate with sales, and so on. This was not just an inconvenience, but a real pain point, and produced a lot of inconvenience, a lot of workarounds, redundant data entry, spreadsheets all over the place. In short, lots of headaches. Now, Dynamics 365 changes all that, providing you with one connected platform for managing your internal and customer-facing processes. Not only that, but because it is modular in nature, you just start with the pieces and parts that you need at the time. For instance, if you just need field service, we're going to talk about field service today, you just buy field service. If you need sales and field service, you buy those two modules, implement those two modules, allows you to grow at your own pace. In addition to that, you've got productivity where you need it, full integration across the Microsoft Cloud environment, Office 365, Excel, Word, etc. Keeps your staff and employees very productive while they're going about their day-to-day tasks. There's intelligence built right in, so with Azure, Internet of Things, AI that works throughout the background, your staff can be guided to make the best decisions and take the right actions at the right time pushing forward a sales process, or delighting a customer. Extensibility is also built in, so you don't have to worry about outgrowing this system or your investment. Take a look at these hexagons. These are all the workloads or modules that are contained inside of Dynamics 365. So we're going to focus mostly on field service, but we'll touch upon sales and customer service as well, because obviously they're part of a typical business sort of scenario. Again, this is one unified platform for managing all of your business: lead capture, sales, contracting, project management, service scheduling, dispatch, installation, repair, inventory management. It's all under one roof. So let's look at some of the benefits of using Dynamics 365. The bottom line is you'll be able to concentrate more on maintaining a higher level of customer service and satisfaction, spend more time executing your plans for revenue and growth, and less time trying to cobble together all the disparate solutions and databases you're probably on now. We'll touch on all of these areas today, but again, we're going to emphasize those processes that are mapped out in respect to field service. Now, what I'll do now is I'm going to pass the presentation over to my colleague, Ken. So give me just a moment to do that, and he will take over.
Thank you, Mark. And let me know when you can see my screen.
I can see a dashboard.
Beautiful. Thanks everybody for joining us today. As Mark said, my name is Ken Farmer. I'm the President and Chief Solution Architect for Dyn 365 Pros. I've been working with the Dynamics 365 platform since the beginning. Microsoft released it as Dynamics CRM back in 2002, I think was the official release. I was involved in the beta program for that release. So it's been quite a ride. The platform has changed and grown tremendously. The depth and breadth of functionality has just actually kind of blown me away. Field service has been around within the platform now for a couple of years, and has had several updates to it. And what we're going to do today is we're going to, as Mark said, walk you through sort of a high-level overview. There's an enormous amount of moving parts inside of field service, inside of service management, inside of sales. So we're really only going to be able to touch on a couple of those. I'm going to start by giving you a quick walkthrough of the platform of Dynamics 365. Kind of show you some of the record types, talk a little bit about how they work together, and then we're going to go in and finish the last, hopefully, 25 minutes of today's session in sort of a day in the life. We're going to walk through somebody receiving a call, how you route that call, how you set up a case, how you convert that to a work order, and then move it into the field services process. Please, we have the ability to take your questions through the question and answer box inside of the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll try and get to those at the end, so please go ahead and ask those questions in that box, and Mark will deal with those when we get to the end of the presentation today. So let's start. This is field service. This is Dynamics 365. This is one of our primary demo environments, and so I just want to caution you, we've got every one of the modules that Mark was talking about previously. We've got sales, marketing, field service. I need to get my little controller out of the way. There we go. I've even got portals installed here and resource scheduling. So we certainly don't have time to get through all of those. As Mark talked about, starting with sales, we have full automation with sales, so that you can take that lead to cash sort of path, starting with leads in whatever shape they come into your organization, all the way through to creating opportunities, creating quotes in those opportunities, and then converting those to orders, passing those orders into an ERP system, whether that be a Dynamics labeled ERP system, which we integrate to quite often, or any of the other ones that may be out there, which we also integrate to. The process is pretty seamless. Your team really gets involved in seeing the same set of data, and to use a phrase, unfortunately, that I don't like much, but it's very apropos here, is you get the full 360-degree view of your customers and what's going on with their accounts throughout your organization. And that's really critical to being able to get your people the data that they need, being able to have them see the activities that are going on throughout that entire process. All of it, of course, is controlled by security. So if any of you are starting to worry a little bit that everybody can see everything and mess up the data, that's all controlled by security. Security is very granular, and you can expose just the right amount of information, just the right amount of fields on a form, or not any information at all, depending upon the user's role, or whether you have perhaps some outside contractors that are coming in very specific. Maybe you have a lead qualification contractor group that's coming in. They can just see the leads, and they can just see the actual information on the lead forms that they need. Those processes are pretty solid within the system. So we're going to actually start. I want to show you some account records first, and there's some specific records that we're going to be using in our demo today. This is pretty much Microsoft demo data that we've gone in and changed and made it a little bit location relevant. We've got a couple of variables today. I'm actually giving this, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona today, but all of our data that we're using is really focused around the Southern California area. So you'll see a couple of little quirks there that the system knows I'm here in Phoenix, and it's trying to route me a little bit differently. So we'll get through that, no big deal. Let's start with AdventureWorks Electronics. So one of the things that we have here with our structure in the platform is the ability to link records, and that's really the beauty of it. And how they get linked is critical to the underlying processes. As Mark mentioned, we have incredible workflow. We have artificial intelligence engines in the background, things that really help drive efficiency with your team. In this specific instance, as we go through the day in the life, we're going to use AdventureWorks Electronics as the customer that calls in with their issue. Now, there's a couple of key things here that get set up ahead of time when you are onboarding your customers. In this case, we've got, you see a couple of things here. The fields that are not populated are not going to be relevant to what we're doing here, but you've got a couple of key things. For instance, if there's an account number that you use when you tie into ERP, typically when we do these integrations is the golden record, right? That's got to be the one that's helping you process invoices. That's where you collect your cash. That's where, all of those things need to happen correctly. So tying that back and in the integration, bringing that account number over makes a lot of sense. When you're dealing with your finance information, that's also becomes incredibly important. This layout that you see here in the form is pretty standard with the out-of-the-box forms. Most of what you're going to see is an out-of-the-box form or an out-of-the-box function. We didn't want to throw in any extra pieces and parts that you wouldn't necessarily see out of the box. Excuse me. So you basically see these 3-column layouts throughout the system, where you have what I call the kind of the demographic information here on the left-hand column. Then you've got some activity-related information, your relationship assistant, your insight assistant, which is where the AI is really starting to populate. And we don't have a lot of time to get into that today, but think of this as in terms of an assistant that's sitting in the background, kind of parsing through your data and finding out that maybe there's an email that came through where there was a promise made or a customer's making a request and the system hasn't seen that that's been interacted on. That's where you're going to start seeing some of these insights coming up. Post is really all about the internal postings. So if you think of it as a social media feed, but it's just internal, where activities can be recorded here. People can go in and look at certain account records, or they can go to their social feed, their internal Dynamics 365 social feed, and see what activities have occurred on accounts or records inside the system that either they own or they follow because they happen to be involved in some sort of an implementation or a campaign or something like that. And then over here on the right-hand side is where you've got additional related information. For instance, we've got Brandy Diaz, which is the primary contact, and she's listed here as their contact. So if there are multiple contacts here, you'd see them here. In this case, we've just got Brandy, and she's going to come into play later on when we start creating cases. We also have, again, because I've got all the different modules loaded, and because I've got an administrator security code or security role, we've got quite a bit of other information that's displayed here. The most important part for us today is this field service piece down below. So with, again, I talked about the relationships between the accounts. This account record that we're looking at is AdventureWorks Electronics. This is what we are going to be considering the service or location for the service that's being performed and that we're going to be dealing with a little bit later on. In this case, we have a billing account. So oftentimes in your relationships between, excuse me, between your pieces of data, between your customers, you may have a separate billing account that's the headquarters, and then they've got, maybe it's a fast food if you're working with that industry, or it's a healthcare group, or it's we're going to do some robotics type demonstrations here. So whatever that may be, you've got different locations for that primary billing account. The system can take that into account so that when we start creating that case, and from that case the work order, and the work order goes out to the field, it's understood that there's a billing account that's actually going to get the end result invoice from that service. If there is an invoice that needs to be generated, or if it's not under warranty and it's included, that billing account is going to get it, and we can keep that relationship straight. You also have the ability to create a couple of different items, and again, these are out of the box. Generally, we add more information in these. We do a little bit more mapping between the fields, but this is all the out of the box. This is not tax exempt. We have a tax code schedule in here that I've called California 2018. They're attached to service area. There's no travel charge, and some special instructions when they actually check in when we get further into it. Okay, so that's a basic account record. If we were to look over at at Brandy's contact record, I'm just going to flip over. I can click on that. It's going to bring up the record for me. You're going to see the same look and feel, right? You're going to see the demographic information we talked about here. We're going to see various activities or posts that may be listed here, including notes, company that she works for, any opportunities, cases, etc., perhaps that she's been involved with. And the thing to remember as you go through a lot of these records is that we sign on accounts as customers. However, we deal with contacts, and that relationship is incredibly important. And not all systems out there in the marketplace get that relationship right. You can market to accounts, for instance. Maybe they've got a default email account that you can market to. However, you're really dealing with the individuals there, and you deal with different individuals. Sales may be dealing with a certain group of people. Fulfillment may be dealing with a different group of people. Service and customer service and field service and on location type stuff are dealing with a different group. It's important to have the contacts available. It's important to have the role identified that they play, not just the job title, because I don't know about you guys, but I see people all the time that just really make up new job titles, things that pop up, that you've never heard before, and chief officer of fun or something like that. But it doesn't really help you define the role, the actual role that individual plays. So we can do that. We can control that as we walk through there. Okay, so those are accounts and cases. Obviously, within the sales side, you also have things like opportunities and leads. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to get into that today, but understand that there's a process. There's what we call a business process flow that takes you from a lead, can convert that, qualify that lead. It creates the opportunity and walks you through and truly automates that. And it's completely configurable for your business process. And we've got some other webinars that we've done that are specific to sales, Dynamics 365 for sales or Dynamics 365 for customer service that you can really focus on and take a look and drill in on those. Today's webinar is more around the service and field service, so we're gonna start looking at some of those. Let's start with service. In some cases, the on-site field service calls can start at the case level. Somebody's calling in to customer service, or they send an email. There's multiple ways that can be driven, including things like texts, portal, them going into a self-service portal, creating a case or a service request at that portal level, which we certainly have built into our system, and that workflow exists out of the box. So we're going to start here, and we're going to take a look at some cases. We're going to take a look at some specific items here, and then we're going to, when we go through the day in the life here in a couple minutes, we'll start at the case level. We'll start with a phone call coming in. In this case, this is what a case record looks like. Again, the same out-of-the-box features where you've got some specific information on the left-hand side that can be considered demographic. You have this ribbon across the top, and you see this in the sales process. You see this in a service level process. You can choose to use it, not use it. You can have multiple processes that you can change as needed based on certain triggers within the sales process or within the case. In this case, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is a standard customer service business process flow. As you can see, phone to case process that we've got created out of the box. You identify what's going on here. You do a little research, and if we click on the research, we can see we can find some similar cases to this. We can take the information that the customer's given us and really try and track down what needs to happen, and then we can resolve the case for them. Now, sometimes it's depending upon your business and depending upon the service that's needed, sometimes this is a 15, 20, 30-minute phone call, and that's the whole case from start to finish. They resolve it on the phone, they record their information here at the case, and then they can go ahead and resolve the case. Other times it's a bigger issue, one that you've got people on the phone that take the initial information, they realize it has to go to a specialized group or another department. You can route this case through a system of queues that we have available, whether it's different departments or product related queues, so that somebody who's managing that queue can see that case come through, they can pick it up and they can finish it and resolve it and do what they need to do on it. You can have knowledge base articles that you bring into this and attach to the case that may be relevant to what you're doing. You can search for certain things. You can do a full text, not just keyword search against your KB articles. These are KB articles that you would create yourself, that you can manage, and that you can even expose on the portal so your customers can do some self-service. So this is the overall case record. We'll spend a little bit more time on this when we get to the day in the life, all the way down into a lot of these things we're certainly not going to be able to cover today. The main thing here is this field service piece, which we'll talk about when we do the day in the life, where we actually create an incident type, and that actually triggers certain workflows and certain steps that are going to happen for you automatically when you create a corresponding work order, for instance. Okay, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. Other articles or other items in service that we don't have time to cover today, but I want to kind of hit up for you is the queues we talked about a little bit, your knowledge base articles that you can create, manage, and publish to the web if you choose to. All of these allow you to bring in levels of efficiency for your team, for your customer service agents, for your people on the phone or the people on the field even that you may not have had in the past, and that becomes incredibly powerful and honestly can be some really quick wins when we implement customer service for customers in the field, and allowing them to really benefit from that as you go through. Lots on customer service we haven't talked about. Entitlements, SLAs, all of those are built into the customer service module. You can set up multiple SLAs. For instance, you may have an SLA that says, we need to respond within an hour, first response, yet we have a 4-hour window to actually resolve the case. You can program those in, and they give you timers. In this case, I'm going to show this to you, but it's not going to be, it's already expired, because this is one that I created quite a little bit of time ago. So you can see that we actually expired on the first response. We're non-compliant based on the KPI that we've had identified for this SLA. However, we're still doing well at the resolve level. We still have 2.5 hours to resolve this case. So again, we can't really get into depth on that today, but we've got some other webinars that we go into on that. All right, so let's go back and take a look at field service. So that was sort of a really 50,000 foot view, even probably 100,000 foot view of customer service. Customer service can be used for internal issues. We have some customers that use it for bug tracking, where we configure and do a little bit of configuration around their specific needs for bug tracking, and how to be able to do analytics on that and pull together customer service cases that are all related, that might be specific to a bug within a piece of software or hardware that they're trying to deal with. Analytics, of course, become the key there. Okay, field service. Let's look at that real quick, and then we'll jump into the day of the life. Field service has a lot of moving parts. It's not generally something that you can turn on and immediately start working with. You've got quite a bit of moving parts that need to be configured and set up correctly for you to be able to move forward with it. You've got the creating resources, creating the skill sets that those resources may have, configuring it in a way that you can automate as much as possible in the background. I'm going to jump over here really quick to resource scheduling, which is related to what we use inside of field service. So a lot of these pieces and parts are created separately as part of the setup to get yourself ready to go to start using field service. In a lot of cases, you can set up your resources. These are resources that you would be booking and putting out into the field. These can be sales resources. So in some situations, customers that we've worked with, they actually have a call center that's trying to schedule sales visits. So you've got somebody that's going out there and showing the product, or trying to do a site evaluation for them as part of the sales process. So that's the first step for them. So you're actually using users within the system, or contacts. These can be external contractors that you may use, and you can schedule them as well as internal users. But it's just really in how you set these up. For instance, we're going to jump over here to our friendly resource that we're going to use today. His name is Ken Farmer. He's a really good guy. Let me actually do a quick search, because we've got over 100 of these here. So I'm just going to look for Ken. Here's Ken Farmer. And this is Ken Farmer's resource record. We identify his time zone, because that's important to your scheduling. We identify his resource skills and his perhaps resource role. So skills and roles are important when you're doing your scheduling. You're trying to find the right resource to get somebody out in the field. One of the challenges for a lot of scheduling type applications is you may have, may be a nationwide organization. You may have different regions, you may have different products, you may have 700 resources that you need to kind of wade through to find the right resource to schedule. So we have the ability in here to segment those out, to provide resource skills. In this situation, Ken Farmer is truly into robotics. He's part of the robotics group. He's a robotics engineer, and he has skills for robotics hardware as well as robotics programming. And we have the capability of creating the skills as needed, setting up a rating value. So you can see that, Ken's familiar with the hardware side of it, but he's proficient in the programming side, and you'll see later how that comes into play. We have multiple skills that we've got in this data, in our sample data. You can set and control those. They really become very specific to your organization and your industry. Maybe it's not a skill, maybe it's actually a certification, where not only does Ken need to have robotics hardware skill, but there's a specific certification that he needs to take. He needs to pass a test, or he needs to pass a applications related test where you see that he can perform the skill, that he can perform the work, and then that skill may be, that certification actually may have a 2-year time frame on it, right? So it expires in 2 years, he has to become recertified. Those kinds of things can be tracked in here as a skill. If we were to pop open one of these skills, you can see that when you set up the skill, you have the ability to set up the familiarity on it. And if we can go into drill into the actual characteristic here, where we're saying it's robotics hardware, it's a skill, but it can also be a certification. So you have the ability to set those up. You have the ability to truly work through the pieces and parts to give you the granular data, the level of granularity that you need to be able to schedule this as efficiently as possible. A couple of quick things on this, and then we're going to jump out. Again, we're still looking at the bookable resource Ken Farmer. You can set his start and end location. So when you're looking at trying to get somebody out in the field, are they location agnostic, or is it specific to where they start from, their resource address, or perhaps your office address, your organizational unit address? Those become important, and you can have a mix of those people when you're doing scheduling. Put him on the schedule board, yes. Enable him for search, yes. Maybe he works out of a specific warehouse, so if he's looking to pick up parts, you can set that. And you can start doing a little bit of quote-unquote job costing, if you'd like, where you set his hourly rate. You can look at the cost of pieces of equipment that you may need, products that you may need to take out there as well. Again, we don't have time to dive into that. That's more of a sales-related type webinar, but we can certainly talk to it. If you've got some specific questions on that, we'd love to spend some time with you. Perfect. All right, so that's kind of the skill, the resource and the skills that they may have, and their ability to use that as a filter. Okay, so real quickly, we looked, let's look at the resource skills. So these are the skills that we talked about, right? We have quite a few of these. We've got 33 of them set up in our database in this, including project management, production planning, logistics. We've even got some programming ones up here for some other type of demos that we do. Resource requirements, bookings, schedule board, which we're going to look at here in a second. Also work hour templates. So you may have different geos, you may have different time zones. You may have some folks, for instance, that work in a desert or hot environment, say Arizona, where I am today, and you generally, their schedule hours for working in the field are from 6 in the morning until 2. So they're not really working in the heat of the day. Maybe they're doing roof installations or HVAC installations or something like that. So you can set the work hour templates and assign it to the various people. It isn't a blanket one for everybody, although it can be. You can have it set up individually. Okay. All right. So let's go back. That were some of the pieces and parts we're gonna kind of walk through in this day of life. I wanted you to see them ahead of time, so we can just sort of go through and start taking us through that the day in the life. And we're going to end at the mobile client and show you what the tech in the field sees and how he can work through the cases and work orders and such that he gets assigned. Okay, so now we're going to start. We're going to start at the case level. Work orders do not need to be created from cases. You have instances perhaps where you do preventative maintenance. and a work order is one part of that. And in that situation where you've got a scheduled annual maintenance schedule, every 3 months they have to go out on site and check HVAC filters, for instance, you can preset that up so that it auto-generates those work orders for you to up for you in the schedule board, ready to be scheduled. Or if you have a preferred resource that always goes out, you can add that to the schedule, and those work orders would then get auto-generated by the system and auto-scheduled by the system, and you can change that scheduling, of course. But in this case, what we're going to do is an active, either a phone call that came in, we're going to do a phone call, but you can also do emails or any other way that this case comes into you. So I'm a customer service agent, the phone rings, I create a new case. This is the person I'm talking to is Brandy. So I'm talking to, and we start with the customer, right? So you can see that there's lots of empty fields. I can just type adventure, and it tells me that this red X means that there's more than one. I'm going to grab AdventureWorks Electronics. And by doing so, you see some information starts getting populated, and I'm talking on the phone. Now I can type her name, but I can also just quickly hit this lookup, and this is a contextual lookup within the system. We have these throughout the system, where instead of looking at 5,000 contacts, it's only pulling up the contacts that are specific to AdventureWorks Electronics. In this case, it's Brandy. So I'm going to add Brandy in here. If there's a specific entitlement or product, we can certainly add that. I'm talking to Brandy. Brandy says, hey, you know, we've got this assembly line, and the main control unit for assembly line 2 is not functioning correctly. I need somebody to come out and service it. So I'm just going to give it a case title that makes sense and this is a free text field for a reason, so you can add something in here that makes sense. We also have the capability of adding a little bit of code to auto-generate this case title based on other fields. So some customers like to see the customer name populated in the case title dash, you know, something else, the subject matter or another field in here that can be populated. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and type it out. Assembly line 2 control unit broken. All right, and then it's going to auto-generate an ID for me. We also can segment this by subject, and this is really for analytics and reporting and perhaps triggering workflows that then route this case automatically to somebody who's specific to a product. We're not going to use that in our demo today. We can provide a description here, but we really need to provide it at the work order level. Sorry. If you've ever seen me demo before, you know that I can't type worth beans, so I apologize for that. To not working control unit issues. And maybe there's an error code that they're getting off of this control unit. One of the things I just want to bring up here too is we have the capability of doing what's called IoT, Internet of Things, if you're familiar with that. Basically a small device, motherboard or a circuit board that's implanted into one of your devices out in the field. In this case, assembly line 2 control unit. That control unit has certain specifications that it has to work within certain specs. And you may be able to use that to say system down, or it's working outside of the specifications, it's overheating, whatever the case may be. And that IoT unit automatically sends a signal to Dynamics 365 field service, which can then trigger a case record, can trigger a work order, can trigger an alert. So things happen in the background so that by the time Brandy calls us, perhaps we've already had this work order generated, or we can be calling Brandy and say, hey, it looks like assembly line 2 just went down. Have you guys taken a look at it? Blah, blah, blah. So that's a huge piece in here. If we're using the customer service portal, we can publish this to the web so that she can interact with it. If we have any knowledge base articles attached here, we can attach that. And because we're going to have to send somebody out, actually, I'm going to leave that alone, and I'm going to show you something on that real quick. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this record. I've got all the data that we put in here. It's saving it for me, and now we can go up and do anything else that we might need to with this. I'm going to reduce this down so we can get some more real estate. So because we've now generated this case, we know that we have to send somebody out to Brandy. You may have it set up differently. We're going to have the same person who's generating the case is also going to be dealing with a work order. So we've got Brandy on the phone still, and we're going to say, okay, we're going to create a work order for you. In some situations with some customers, they have people that take the case. They may generate the work order and then their job is done. Somebody else then processes the work order, passes it to scheduling. So depending upon how you've got it, the system is very easy to configure for your process. In this case, you know, I'm the one on the phone. I'm on the phone with Brandy. I'm going to go ahead and create the work order. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and say convert to work order. Now, it's going to toss up an error message, and I just want to show this to you. What it says is that you've got to make sure that you have an incident type. So this is one of those required business process pieces that is in here that says, hey, you need to provide that incident type. And the reason is incident types are set up and pre-configured to help populate work orders. So I can go in here and look and say, hey, I need to replace a broken part. Each one of these has its own set of, and I'll show you this at the work order level, own set of skills, own set of services, perhaps products that you need to make sure that you address when you go out there and perform this on-site service. So I'm going to say replace broken part. We're going to do that, and now we're going to go ahead and create that work order. And the main reason that I wanted to show you that is because it's important that when you get to the work order level, just filling out a work order from scratch by itself could take some time. But we've got a customer on the phone, and you don't necessarily want to have them wait on the phone for 35 minutes while you're trying to fill out this work order. So I clicked OK to that, and it's going to pull up the actual work order for me. I've obviously got Brandy on the phone still. And so now we're going to go through and look at the work order. Again, this is that business process flow. So this is the business process work order flow that can walk you through to make sure that you get all the pieces and parts there. You can configure this in a way that makes sense for your team. We're just going to hide that for now and start walking through here. So again, over here on the left-hand side, the service account is AdventureWorks. Billing electronics, the billing account is AdventureWorks itself. You can see that this is an open work order, but it's unscheduled. That system status is important because it helps walk through and identify certain things that are going on. You see our primary contact was pulled over from the case. The incident type replaced broken part was pulled over by the case. We can go down and look at other pieces and parts. And in this is generally a mapped field. So this should have come over from the case. In my demo environment here, it's not mapped for some reason. So I've got to write myself a note to do that. So this is assembly line number 2 is not functioning. Control unit issues. Okay. Now you see that we already have a estimated time here. Now the estimated time is generated from that incident type that we talked about. So again, these are all coming through automatically for us. And you'll see as we go down farther, I'm going to just save this real quick. Actually, let me just refresh it real quick. The incident type, because we identify the incident type, what it's going to do is it's going to provide you with a lot of underlying information in the back. So here's the work order type, and it's going to generate that. It actually brings a price list through on-site, California service territory. This instruction was actually brought over from the account, if you remember when we showed the account. So make sure you ask for Brandy when checking in. these are the information, this is the information that the service technician is going to see when he's out in the field. So really the only last part that we need here with Brandy on the phone is to talk about when she'd like us to come out. A couple of different ways to do it. We're going to do it here from the time promised, and we're going to identify, she says she wants us out there on the 1st tomorrow. She says it can be anywhere from 8 a.m. to, yep, I know, anywhere from 8 a.m. to 5. Okay, so or 6. So then she says, well, wait a minute, you know, it looks like the morning, you know, we've got some other things going on. It's not really going to be critical for us. You're kind of be in the way, so let's make it noon. Anything from noon to 6, just come out and ask for me so you can get that fixed, right? Okay, so we're done with Brandy on the phone. She can go ahead and get off the phone now, but I want to show you a couple things here real quickly. So this, what I talked about in terms of that incident type, this is the other information that's bringing in. So it's adding these suggested service tasks that the person in the field is going to do with some estimated duration. Confirm the part to replace, review the procedures, perform the repair, test and validate. Pretty simple. You can configure this though to be as complex or as simple as you want to, or don't use it at all. But it helps you to really get this work order configured in a way that makes sense and gets you going, okay? Products, if there was a product that you needed to bring with you, it would be there, excuse me. And let's go to services real quick. And if there were some additional services. So this is where it comes in, for instance, that maintenance thing maintenance schedule I was talking about earlier. The services they would perform, you know, at the HVAC level would be, you know, check all 5 AC units, replace filters in AC units, those kinds of things, okay? Those are all brought up from that incident type. And then you see here at the end, it's automatically populated it with where the location is. That's important, of course, for your tech. We do geocoding with all addresses in the system. As you enter in new ones, they're automatically geocoded to make sure that they, you know where they are. And that information is all pulled forward from the account, okay? So that's the work order. So now we've completed the work order. Brandy's off the phone. You may have somebody else do scheduling, or perhaps it's the same person who took the call. I'm going to go ahead and do the scheduling, and you know, this is Microsoft, right? So there's 3 or 4 or 5 ways to do everything, including booking. What I want to do is I want to go to the service board and show you that. The service board is really the heart of field service resource scheduling. Also project service resource scheduling, but that's a whole different situation. We're going to be looking at our default view as it pops up. And of course, it's loading based off of just no criteria yet, right? We haven't said we want to do this set of scheduling or that set of scheduling. You can see here, we've got the resources, we've got their schedules out here. We're going to actually be booking for tomorrow. So we're going to pull this up instead, so you can see here along the top. We're looking at the 1st, and it's kind of, and this is where I'm in Phoenix, but it thinks I should be in Southern California. Piece comes in because of the way I have it set up. So we're going to do some filtering here. We're going to go over to the filter section, and you see that it's wide open. So I've got 100 resources in my demo data. I want to narrow that down a little bit. So if you remember, we can do it by teams, we can do it by the resource type, which is accounts, contacts, users, even equipment. So for instance, if you have a truck, you have a series of trucks that go out. Trucks can be based as equipment too. They can be set up in the system as warehouses, so you can track inventory with the inventory that might be on that truck. In this case, we've got contacts or users. Contacts would be considered resources that you're going to book that are not necessarily Dynamics 365 users, right? It could be outside contractors, or it could be internal people perhaps that just, they're not going to be using the mobile app. They just, you know, you need to book them out. You need to make sure that they're heading out and doing what they need to do. The filtering is pretty broad, the roles that we were talking about and characteristics. So I'm going to go in here and we're going to filter this down real quick. So I'm going to look for robotics, and this is robotics hardware. So I'm going to click on that. You can see that we can select any rating. So we might want to look for just the proficient, but in this case, I'm going to select any rating. And you'll see now I'm going to hit search. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop from 100 down to those people who just have those characteristics, those skills that allow us to look at, that have the skill that we might be able to schedule for that work order that just came in. You see that there's 16 of them. Right, we're going to scroll down a little bit, and there's Ken Farmer. So here's kind of the core group of people that we're working with. I haven't broken it up by geos. You can filter it by skills and geos and roles. You can do it by organizational unit. So maybe you have a West Coast team and you've got a East Coast team, or you've got a European team. You can be breaking all of that and filtering it down by all of that. Okay. So then I'm also going to just real quickly here go in and set my map. So here's Ken Farmer. I'm going to click on him, and when you click on him, you can see the pin. That's where Ken Farmer is. So if I click on Lizzie, oh, I'm sorry, these guys don't have their location set. So we're going to stay with Ken Farmer. Now I'm going to just kind of drill into the map. Normally this would already be drilled in, and I apologize for that. So we're going to go in here and go a little bit farther. And now we're going to start seeing some other pieces and parts here. So for the day we're looking at, this is Ken Farmer's pin. You can see the multicolored pins here. That's why we know it's him. If I hover over Ken, you can see my skills. You can see and this bar means how good am I. This is the familiar, and this is the proficient that we talked about earlier. Okay. And you can see that we have a couple of other items down here that are close that we need to find and schedule. All right. So I'm going to go to unscheduled work orders, and we're going to pull this up just a bit so we can get a little bit more. Here's the AdventureWorks one I just set, right? This is the one that we just configured. If I hover over this, you can see that this one's Fabricam Robotics, and here's that AdventureWorks electronics. So there's two here that I have to schedule. Now we can do it a couple different ways. Again, Microsoft, right? So we can highlight it and we can find an availability, and it's going to go through and it's going to search, and it's going to look for all people that might be able to handle this. Same thing with this one. We can go down and do this one as well. Instead, what we're going to do is, because we know who's going to be able to handle this, we're going to go back here and we're going to select this, and you can see by the pin where each one of those exists, right? So we're going to schedule, and since Ken is working in this area, we're going to go ahead and say, all right, so this AdventureWorks, we're going to give this to Ken, and here's the times that we promised it, right? So we can pull that out from anywhere from 12, 6. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to schedule this one for Ken, and I'm just going to drag it up here. And it turns green because it says that's when we're going to go ahead and put it in there for him. So now you can see his route change, right? It's going to say, hey, we're going to go and we're going to catch him here. And then, you know, he's still got some time in his day. So we might want to be able to go ahead and move these around a little bit, right? So when we talked to Brandy, she said, yeah, if you could have him come in at noon, but, you know, 11 o'clock is okay too. We didn't put that in here, but we know it. I can go ahead and just drag this and move it and get it a little bit tighter to where he needs to be, right? So now I've got some time in his schedule to go ahead and be able to also schedule this second one that we had here. I didn't need to open it, sorry. But the second one down here is this second one here. So I can go ahead and say, all right, well, this one, this is only an hour and a half. So we're going to schedule this at 2 o'clock. There we go. And now we're pretty much set, and you can see that he's going to be able to go up here and handle this one in Temecula. Then he's going to go over and hit this one and hit this one. Now we can set up the system to where your resources can say yes or no. They can take it or not take it. You can get all kinds of different workflows in the background. Once he's actually scheduled for something, he can even get an email notification if that's what you need. But if he's a user who's using the field app, the field services app, whether it's on his phone or whether it's on his tablet, he's going to have these here automatically for him. So let's go do that. Let's go ahead and look. I've now scheduled this out, and the different colors are going to tell you where they might be in their process. So blue is that it's scheduled, and you see that the status changed to scheduled, right? So as you change the status in the field service mobile app, these colors will change, and this will automatically be fed in here for you. So let's go take a look at that app. This is our field service mobile app, and I am now going to be Ken Farmer in the field. I'm a service technician. And I can go in here and we've added some things since I last had this up. So we're going to go ahead and sync it. And it is scheduled for a auto sync. I think I've got it set up for every 30 minutes. You can change that if you need to. So the app is pretty much the same whether you're dealing with it on a tablet. So I've got it spread out here to tablet size. If I go ahead and pull this in, you'll see this is, it's all reactive, right? So I can go ahead and click on dashboard, and it takes me to the dashboard. I can move over to tomorrow, which is the first that we talked about. Here's all of these work orders that we just set up. Or I can go ahead and expand this out to tablet mode. So that's kind of the tablet size that you get. And then when I click on the dashboard, you can see that the menu stays here on the left, and I can go ahead and look at everything as we look here. All of these things are fed directly from Dynamics 365 in real time. This says you're online. This is async. You have offline capabilities with this as well that are completely configurable, okay? All right, so we're getting to the time, so let's just take a look at one of these. So I'm gonna look at this AdventureWorks that we set up here, work order. So I'm just gonna click on it, and it's gonna pop up here in the left-hand side. And this is all of the information that we want him to look at in the field. So he's got his scheduled start time. He will plug in his regular time. So let's say that he's actually there now. So he's going to say it's in progress, and it auto-populates the actual arrival time. Obviously, we're on the 28th today, and he's scheduled for the 1st. So he looked at it and said, hey, I can get out there a day earlier. Now, if we go back and we take a look at, when it's saved, we can go ahead and take a look at the list over here, and it would go ahead and change this to a different color and show that he's in progress. Okay, let's go back up here. Oh, sorry, I went off of it, and I've got security set on it. There we go. So we have the ability to tie other apps in, so we can be tracking mileage, how the travel is charged. In this case, there's no charge, who the resource is, the work order number, here's the service account, here's my instructions that we saw from actually at the account level that flowed all the way through. I can pick the sub status, maybe here's where I would go ahead and change that system status if I need to. Here's my incident description, so you can see that we go in here, it's Sibling 2. I've got to go in here and take a look at it. There may be additional summary. I could have tied in a specific customer asset. So we can set up customer assets inside the system. Maybe they're serialized, maybe they're not, maybe they have warranties and SLAs against them. Here's the address, here's my work order type. So now we're going into all of the other pieces and parts. Here are those service tasks that we talked about, any products. I may need to add a product. So I can go in here and select a product and go in and figure out what the product is that I need to add. And here's the list of products that are in CRM. They're in Dynamics 365 that, as you would expect, if you're integrated with ERP, have followed over, okay? And then lastly, I can go in, let's get out of that. Discard. Yes, I know that. Discard changes. Lastly, I can go in and I've done the work. I may want to take a picture of the pieces or the setup or something like that. I can take a picture of it with my mobile device and instantly attach it to a note here and include some notes and descriptions. I can go in and make sure everything's done. And then finally, I can go to the customer and say, hey, we finished with this. Can you sign this for me? Here's my phone, here's my tablet. And they sign it, and then we go ahead and save it. And then that's going to save the signature into the record. So we've got a customer signature here at the work order level. Okay. can see that it falls off because we've completed it now, and we're on to our next one, right? And when we sync real quick, and we're out of time, and let me just jump over real quickly to show you that. We're done. I'm going to go back down. And now we're going to be able to go to the work order. And you see that that work order moved off the calendar because we actually did it a day early, right? So now I can go to this day early. I can see that it's changed to green. It's moved on now, so it's completed and it's ready to go. All right. Okay, so that was our 50,000 foot view. Hopefully you've got it's kind of tempted you a little bit to look further, and we can show you the system in a deep dive type of a demo.